What's going on, guys? Matt from Spark, and welcome to the first episode of Spark Notes. This is going to be a whole series I'm going to try to do, hopefully once a week. I'm not going to hold myself to it, maybe every other week, depending on how crazy it is over here. But my plan is to give you a resource that you can email, whether it is our bike or somebody else's brand or an electric scooter, anything related to this whole e-bike world. Email me a question or leave a comment down below with your question, and I will try to review as many of those as possible and answer them to the best of my ability. I'm not going to be able to answer everything, but I will do my best, and hopefully we can figure out some of these problems that you guys are facing. I'm going to limit myself, though, because I could do this for hours and hours and hours, so every time I do it, I'm going to limit it to a half hour. I'm going to try to estimate a half hour at least. Maybe it's a little bit more, maybe a little bit less each week. We'll see. I got to edit each one of these too, So this is the first week of me doing this, and I didn't get a ton of them. I probably got about 20, maybe 30 emails. A lot of them are about the same kinds of things. So let's just give a basic rundown about some of the topics we're going to talk about. So I'm just going to start by answering a bunch of different questions related to the Brute and to the Javelin. I'm then going to answer a bunch of questions about forks. I got a few emails from people asking about forks for their e-bikes. I'm going to answer a couple questions about far drivers and a couple questions about bandits that are out in the wild, and even if you can use those. If you can use a far driver with a bandit. I got some questions about Segway's new Zyber bike, our thoughts about it, some of the specs, all those different things. And I got a bunch of other odds and ends here that I'll just try to go through, right? So and one thing I will say, I'm probably not going to mention names. So if you're worried about getting called out about a question or looking silly or something like that, don't worry about it. We're a community. All of us are at different levels of expertise here. I've been doing this for a few years, but I know tons of people that know way more than I do about this. So it can be a very simple question up to the most complex question. Don't worry about it. Send it over and we'll see what we can do. So on that note, first question here. Can you identify this connector? All right. Yes, I did some quick research because I have never seen that connector before. It is called an LP16-3 connector, and it's used on a very specific kind of scooter. So whatever kind of scooter you have, this is that connector. So look up LP16-3. I think it might be a European company that made that scooter, but it is a 72 volt as far as I can see, like you mentioned in your email, and that should get you going. Oh, okay, I have a question about forks. So this guy is wondering about forks on his Super 73 S2. So forks are kind of deceptive in their complexity. There's a few things that you need to check to see if a fork is going to work for you. First off, is it a through axle or is it just like a standard dropout style front wheel, right? So take a look at your front wheel. Decide between through axle or a standard dropout. That's your first one. Next up, you need to make sure that the fork you are looking at is the correct width for your tire, okay? So make sure that the listing says that it is for a fat tire or for a regular 26-inch mountain bike tire or whatever it is. And the best bet, honestly, is to take a tape measure and measure the dropout dimension of your current fork, and then make sure that is very close to what the listing of the new fork you're considering has, okay? The next thing you're gonna look at is your head tube size. So go to your bike and measure the length of the head tube, and the head tube is gonna be where this post is going to go through and in between your whole headset bearings. And what usually happens with most bikes is the fork is going to arrive with this post here being too long. And that is totally fine. Because what you're going to do is you're going to get your fork in and you're going to put it through your head tube. You're going to put your other part of that triple tree on, okay? Make sure your bearings are good. Put your stem on. Put your cap on as much as possible. And then mark it with a Sharpie and cut off the excess with a saw. So you kind of have to cut your fork to the size of your bike. Now, you need to make sure that the head tube is not longer than this post here, because then you're never going to be able to mount it. So always make sure that the fork you're looking for has a long enough post. In terms of quality of your forks, if possible, go with an inverted fork. If you're riding like a high-speed bike, a Super 73, or any other kind of fat tire bike, try to find an inverted fork. Don't do a classic fork. The inverted forks are just so much more rigid. It's really going to help you out. The only downside with the inverted fork is that it makes it difficult to add a front fender. So, just keep that in mind. You don't have as many fender options, but it's going to be way, way more rigid. And then if you are comparing a bunch of forks and you're like, okay, this one is the right tire size. It's got my through axle, so we're good to go. It's got my mounts for my hydraulic brakes. It's got the right head tube size, everything like that. I can't decide between these two. What you need to look at next is the stanchion size. The stanchion is, they're the two vertical pieces, those two vertical tubes, what you would consider to be the shocks, that are the suspension. The wider those are, the more rigidity you are going to have, and the more stable it's going to be. All right, so if you're looking at two of them, and one of them has a stanchion that is, 25% larger than the other one, I would always try to go for the one with a larger diameter stanchion if you can. That's just kind of my rule of thumb on that. Having an adjustable front fork is nice, but after riding thousands and thousands of miles, I can't think of a single time that I ever locked my front fork out. Maybe you guys are different, but generally I don't really lock out my front fork ever. Maybe you want to adjust the compression of it. So if you do have like an air shock, you can add some more air to it and make it a little bit stiffer, which is helpful. But really look for the right stanchion diameter. Make sure that it has the right axle type. And then the last thing you're going to check is the length, the total length of that stanchion. The longer that stanchion is going to be, the more slack your rake angle is going to be. The shorter that stanchion is, the more steep your rake angle is going to be. And the more slack your rake angle is, the larger your turning radius is, but the more stable your bike is at high speed. The steeper your fork is, the better turning radius it's going to have, but the worse and less stable it's going to be at high top speed. So if you're modifying your bike, I would definitely recommend to try to make your rake angle a bit slacker and to give it some more stability at high speed. All right, questions about Brutes and Javelins. Let's get those out of the way. What is the seat width of the Brute? It is 6.5 inch. What is the seat width of the Javelin? It's about 8 inches. Let's see. Yeah, the Javelin seat is a little bit wider because the frame is a little bit wider, and it has to cover up a hinge and a few other little tricky things. Pannier bags. People asking lots of questions about pannier bags and mounting things. So we do use like a standard pannier bag that we have just found online that works on the Brute. You don't have to use that one. You can use whatever pannier bag you want. The pannier bag that we have is kind of nice because it has a piece of fabric in between the two, so you can just rest it on the rack. But there are a lot of other pannier bag types that don't use that. And so I would recommend looking up motorcycle pannier bags because those don't have that piece of fabric. They have these little clips on them, and they're designed to go onto a rack. And you can use those on our system, and you might have to do a little bit of modding, but that's part of this stuff, right? So look up motorcycle pannier bags, and you'll probably find something that is going to be more in line with what you want to do. The Javelin doesn't allow for pannier bags and doesn't allow for a rear rack. And that is a result of the seat, the way the seat works on the Javelin. It just doesn't allow for that. If we put a rear rack on the Javelin, it would just pivot, and then everything that was on that rack would fall off. And we couldn't make the seat fold the other way because it created a whole bunch of tolerance issues and engineering problems that I probably spent 3 or 4 months trying to solve, and I could not solve it. So I just had to move on from it. So as it stands right now, there's no rack or pannier bag for Javelin. On a similar note, people are asking about, can you make the Javelin carry a second passenger? And my answer to that is going to be pretty interesting. Basically, sure, it's physically possible to carry a second passenger on the bike, but we don't like it. I don't currently recommend it. And the reason is, over the past 4 or 5 years of building the Bandit, we found that we ran into a series of problems with the bike because people were carrying passengers on the bike and they were going beyond the weight capacity of it. It's really easy to forget the weight capacity when you're going out with somebody on the back, just because you're not adding your weight plus their weight plus shoes plus a backpack plus all this other stuff. And we had problems where spokes were getting loose because they were carrying too much capacity and all these different things. And so we just kind of removed the option for Javelin because people were not accurately following weight capacities and it was just damaging the bike. And we just decided leave that for the Brute. The Brute's weight capacity is so far and above beyond what we show it as online that it's totally fine. But the Javelin is a little bit closer. We have an engineering safety factor on there, but still, it is what it is. A lot of people are saying, oh, the Javelin's weight capacity is only 300 pounds. It's not that much. I'm seeing other e-bikes that are 400 pounds. Well, what you have to keep in mind, the Javelin off the bat already weighs about 100 pounds more than your average e-bike, right? So you're taking maybe a 400-pound weight capacity of a regular e-bike and then adding on the extra weight of our battery, or the brakes, of all these other things on that bike. And, you kind of lose some of that capacity just because of the physical weight of the bike itself. And so that makes it kind of difficult when we want to add on passengers to the back. It's also just kind of a smaller bike. It's not that small. It's, quite a bit bigger than like an Onyx RCR or than a Suron or something like that. It's notably bigger than those. But still, to fit a second passenger on the back, it's a tight fit. So if you think you can follow under the weight capacity and you and your passenger are small enough to fit on that seat, then sure, go online, get a set of foot pegs and mount them on the swing arm. You can do it. It's not hard to do. Just really be cautious that you're not going beyond the weight capacity. Okay, moving on to the Brute. Can the Brute have foot pegs instead of pedals? Currently, no, it cannot. I don't really have any plans on making a system to put pegs on that bike instead of pedals. What's going on, Chad? Go for it. So yeah, there's no plans right now to do pegs instead of pedals on the Brute. We really want the Brute to be a bike that has pedals. A lot of people want it to have that kind of e-bike feel, the moped feel, and I think taking them off and putting foot pegs on kind of defeats the goal, the whole design goal of that bike. Is it possible to fabricate something where you could put foot pegs on the bike? Yeah, sure. You could probably figure out some type of system that kind of clamps onto the frame and then use a bottom bracket removal tool, extract the bottom bracket, and then put those foot pegs on. But whether or not that's worth it to you, I don't know. I would probably say the thing that you should do instead is take the crank arms off the bike, okay? You can use an $8 tool from Amazon, take the crank arms off, and get some micro crank arms. So they make these cranks that are like 1.5 inches long, and that can replace the larger crank, and that will give you a much more symmetric feel on your feet and is really, really close to foot pegs. So that's my recommendation there. Okay, moving on to far drivers. So for the far driver, this person is wondering if they can just put it on their Bandit. And the simple answer is no, you can't. Unfortunately, the Bandit's motor and the way it connects into the controller and to the pedal assist and all those things, it's really kind of like an integrated system. So if you were to use a far driver, you would have to cut all the wires and you would have to solder on new connectors put those onto the far driver lugs. You would then lose pedal assist because far drivers are not compatible with pedal assist. As far as I know, if somebody knows different than me, please let me know. But in my research, I have not been able to activate far drivers with pedal assist. And then you do all of that, and then what's the benefit? Well, there really isn't a benefit because we already have the controller and the motor and the battery all spec'd to work really, really nice together with each other. So the only thing that you would gain by putting a far driver on a Bandit would be like the ability to modify throttle curves and stuff like that. So it would be pretty insignificant. If you were to do it, it would be a case where you'd be swapping out your motor and your battery. And when you do all that math out, I'm not just trying to sell you on a new bike, but you really might as well just go up and get a new bike and either list that Bandit for sale and use that money to go towards a new bike or to figure something else out. You can basically get a Brute by spending an extra $500 to $1,000 if you were to factor in all the costs of a new motor, new brakes, new fork, all that kind of stuff. So I would say keep your Bandit the way it is. We love our Bandits. It's kind of how our company began, and at the time that Bandit was the fastest bike out there, right? But now there are so many other companies making crazy things. So keep your Bandit the way it is, and then maybe think about getting a new bike. I don't know. All right, let's keep on moving on. People asking all sorts of questions about the Segway Zyber. Yeah, of course we saw it. You saw we put our 0 to 20 mile an hour out. That was no coincidence. But that bike is beautiful. Yeah, I mean, Segway is one of the industry leaders, right? Between everything they've done for their electric dirt bikes and their scooters and all that kind of stuff, they are really pioneers, and huge respect for that design. It looks amazing. It's beautiful. And the price that they're putting out, I'm a little confused by, because I have also seen the prices that are listed in China and in Europe, and they're dramatically different. And I think that might be because they're doing different power limits and things like that in those different areas of the world. But I just haven't had enough time to sit down and I haven't had enough time to compare all those different specs. But there was something that people emailed me quite a bit about that was really weird. And that was the fact that they said 3,000 watts of power with one battery or 6,000 watts of power with two batteries. And I mean, how is that possible? They may have some kind of device on board that changes the total amp output by combining these batteries to be able to put out more current and to create more watts by combining two batteries. I don't really know. I think probably what happened is the people who were making the website maybe got confused by the engineering specs, because my guess is that it's a 3,000 watt nominal motor with 6,000 watt peak. And they probably saw that information and probably thought maybe having two batteries would allow more power. And so it's 6,000 with two batteries. I don't know. I'm just coming up with ideas. I don't really know for sure, guys. But it was weird. One of my biggest pet peeves in this industry is when bike companies only list peak power. I think it's really deceptive. And I think we should only be showing nominal power, because peak power is just, it's very confusing to most people. And the nominal power rating is just probably the most clear and concise way of explaining power. But when your bike doesn't have a lot of advantages over other companies, by listing your peak power, now suddenly your bike seems a lot more powerful. So that's just my hot take on that whole thing. But overall, that Xyber looks pretty good. The thing that I would say they need to change are the brakes. The fork looks okay. It looks pretty good from what I can see, but I would immediately take those brakes off and put something better on. If you're making a bike go that fast and that powerful, put some actual moped, motorcycle brakes on it. It's like another one of my huge pet peeves right now. So that's that. Let's see what else we got. Let me check Instagram, because I got a ton of people that sent me messages through Instagram. By the way, on the note of Instagram, I do my best to keep track of Instagram, but guys, we're a 6-person company, And I get tons of emails and tons of DMs and tons of texts and all these different things coming all different places. I'm likely not going to respond to your DM if you have a random question about a random bike. The best thing you can do now is to message this series and to send an email to that help@sparkcycleworks.com, and I will add it into this video. Our Instagram is really there for marketing and for me to kind of link up with other creators and try to help spread the brand. So it's not an area for technical questions for us. And I know that's not true for other e-bike companies. You can contact them that way. But for us, we're so small that it's hard to keep up with. So let me open up Instagram and see what else I got. Can I send Sir Monster a bike? Maybe. I don't think Sir Monster has any interest in what we're doing. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe tag Sir Monster in this if you think he would be. But we're a small company, guys. We're building in the hundreds of bikes. We're not building in the tens of thousands of bikes. And he is one of the most influential people on YouTube and on the internet for this stuff. And I don't know if it would be worth it for him. But he should totally come out to New England and go on a ride with us. Can you make a Javelin or Brute torquier than a Sigma Altus? That bike is a monster. As of right now, I don't think we could make a Javelin or Brute torquier just by going to the far driver and changing the settings. To make it meet the numbers of that bike, we would have to really change out the motor and the battery and a couple other things. Yeah, so I think that bike definitely probably has our bike's beat for torque, no doubt about it. Will it make it up the San Francisco hills? Unlike the Graffiti X. That's a hot take. I absolutely think the Javelin and Brute can climb those hills. In fact, I know so. We have customers out there right now that are riding them. They seem to be loving them. The Brute and Javelin have very powerful motors for the price. You know, we did a video where I pulled that little K-truck with the Brute. Well, I actually did another video I didn't even put up yet, but we pulled our Ford Transit van with the Brute as well. The Brute may not have a lot of acceleration off the bat compared to some of the other high-powered bikes, but has a lot of low-end torque, and you're going to be taking on hills, no problem. When are truck nuts coming to the Brute? I don't know. I think that's a great idea. We should probably get on that soon. Do you guys have a Brute to test ride? Yeah. Come by our facility, 8 Commerce Drive in North Branford, Connecticut. We have Brutes and we have a Javelin, and you can come take them out for a test ride. In fact, if you give me enough notice, we can schedule a little ride, and I'll take you out for maybe a 15-20 minute ride. And I'll ride a Brute, you'll ride a Javelin, and then halfway through we'll swap them, and you can get a feel for each bike. I'm also happy to schedule meetings so that you can come over here and we can sit down and I can show you all the different components. We have tons of different paint swatches, so you can check out all the different paint options for Javelin, and I can answer all your questions. So yeah, please come take a test ride. And on a related note, we have been seeing a huge spike in orders to the Pacific Northwest. I did not expect this, but the number of bikes that are going to Seattle and to Vancouver, like Canada area, it's crazy. And so I am looking for a bike shop to take on our bikes. So if you know anybody in Washington, possibly Oregon, we'll see, that would want to take on Sparks bikes, let us know, and we'll see what we can do, because I really want a place where somebody can go take a test ride. And on a related note, I would say probably by the end of February, we should be set up with a new shop in California, so that people in the Los Angeles and San Diego area can go to that shop and check out one of Sparks bikes in person. So keep posted for that. We're still working out all the details on that, but we really want a place for you West Coast folks to take a ride. All right, guys, I actually don't even know how long this has gone on for. I've had to start and stop this video like 10 different times because, you know, we are making bikes here and people keep on coming in and asking me questions. So this is just how this whole series is going to go. Hopefully that answers some of your questions. I know I didn't get to answer every question, but It's the best I can do with the time I got right now. So, what do you want to know about? Leave a comment down below or send an email to help@sparkcycleworks.com, and I will do my best next week to answer those questions. If you are in the market for an e-bike, please consider one of our designs. The Brute is amazing for doing cargo stuff, heavy utility work. You know, it really is like a true car replacement. The Javelin is really well suited for suburban commuting. We love to take it on 45-mile-per-hour roads and suburban back roads and things like that. It's really good for longer commutes. So you have your kind of longer commute, really specialized bike. Then you got your heavy-duty utility cargo bike. Two really good options. They are currently $300 off. I don't know if that's going to be true if you're looking at this video maybe a year or two from now. But, it is the winter time and we are getting ready for that spring. So if you want to get a bike, I would get one on order soon because they do take us a few weeks to build. And if you have any questions about those bikes, you can call us. So 800-557-9598. Or your best bet is to email us. That's info@sparkcycleworks.com. All right, guys, that's it. Thanks.